For you. What are you going to do on November 4th?
Vote!
What are you going to do?
Vote!
Okay. And now Jeff Doucette from the College Democrats. Jeff?
Yeah, right here. Hi guys, thank you for coming out today. It's a really good turnout. I just want to let you know that USM College Democrats have been working all fall and will continue to work through the election, getting students interested in the issues and looking into each candidate's positions carefully. We meet every Thursday at 5 p.m. in 209 Payson Smith. So if you guys are free tomorrow evening, please come join us. And I just wanted to introduce Tom Allen. We're very happy to be supporting him this election season. He's been in the Congress for 12 years now. He's a seventh-generation Mainer, born and raised in Maine. He's earned a reputation in the Congress as a leader on healthcare, defense, energy, and the environment. He stood up against the war in Iraq when it was not very popular to do so. He's worked for universal health care for all Americans, and he is the only Senate candidate with his own universal health care plan. He's introduced comprehensive tax relief for middle-class families. He's working to find solutions to reduce global warming and our dependence on foreign oil. And most recently, this morning, he was officially endorsed by Planned Parenthood. So please join me in welcoming our next senator, Tom Allen.
First of all, thank you. I feel like I don't have to do my speech now. You covered all the highlights. But no, this is a great turnout. I appreciate your being here. Do I need to stand in one place, or will that, does that follow me?
Yeah.
I can just walk all over? And,
Yep.
boy, amazing technology. I'm glad of that. No, I'm very glad to be with you today. And I gather that this is a variety of different groups, that you've got some women's studies students here somewhere. Can you raise your hands? Okay. And then you've got some Dr. Finer's business. Business. All right, several. And Dr. Finer, you have an economics group here. How big is that group?
Better be big.
Hey, it is. Good. Any other groups that I'm leaving out, or because I do want to know who's out there. Not that I'm going to change what I'm going to say to you, but I'd like to say things that are relevant. Yes.
Sociology.
Sociology. Okay, good. Well,
any political science students in here at all?
Political science students, all right. And college Democrats. Yes, good, good. Well, I'm very, as Dr. Finer said, I have a very busy schedule these days, and I do go from one thing to another, but that's the nature of this kind of race. And I will say that for my wife and me, for Diana over there, is that a turquoise, or what is that? I know my primary colors, but not some of the others. This has been a decision to take 2 years of our lives and try to make a fundamental change in the direction of the economy by doing what we could do here in Maine. And we made that decision, frankly, because we couldn't take it anymore. We couldn't take what was happening to this country in Washington. I spent 10 years in the minority before being in the majority the last 2 years. Let me tell you, there's a big difference. But this administration, I believe, has done more damage to the country in a shorter period of time than any administration in American history. And I say that not just because I have disagreed with so many of the policies, but I think you can see them. I think you can see the consequences in a middle class that's been left behind in an economy that is right on the brink of a very serious financial catastrophe, certainly the most serious financial crisis that we've had since the 1930s. And so, for those of you who are studying the Great Depression, study hard. We may need you. I actually think it is fortunate that at this particular moment in history, we have Bim Bernanke, who is the chairman of the Fed, whose academic career was based on his work in connection with the Great Depression, because he wanted to understand it, to be able to prevent that kind of event from taking place again. Now, I think that I think that the challenges that face all of you are dramatic. I mean, you're going into a different world, and we have got to get it right for you, among other people. We have got to get it right for this younger generation. Let me say just a few things start with a few comments about the Planned Parenthood endorsement, and in particular, that this whole issue of how women have been treated by this administration. There are several different categories we could talk about. One is, of course, the President's judicial appointees, particularly Sam Alito. I didn't have a vote, but I made it very clear before the Senate took its vote that I would oppose Sam Alito because I thought the record was absolutely clear that when someone comes to a judicial position with a very clear ideological agenda, not just in terms of what he did as when he was working for the Reagan administration, but in terms of his decisions, the decisions he had made as a judge. One of which was he filed the sole dissenting opinion in an abortion case, arguing that the husband had an absolute right to be informed and to have his information confirmed in writing before a woman had an abortion. It was either the husband or the father, I can't remember. Which, Sandra Day O'Connor just took apart in a later case that she was ruling on. And the substitution of Alito for Sandra Day O'Connor has set back this country significantly, not just in the area of reproductive rights with the approval of a law that we passed in Congress dealing with late-term abortions, but also most notably, for women anyway, with the case of Lilly Ledbetter. Lilly Ledbetter worked for Goodyear for over 20 years, and she found out near the end of her time of employment that she had been paid less, substantially less, than men doing the same job for years and years and years. And these Title VII cases had always gone off on a rule that you filed your case, you had to file your case or make your claim within 180 days of the last act of discrimination, which had always been taken to be the last paycheck you received. And Sam Alito, in a 5-4 majority, wrote an opinion which said, no, it's not the last act of discrimination, it's the first. Your first discriminatory paycheck. Most people wouldn't have a clue when they get their first paycheck whether they're being paid more or less than someone doing a comparable job. And that was Lilly Ledbetter's case. It took over a decade for her to find out that she had been, in fact, discriminated for a very long period of time. We've tried to change that law. In the House, we passed the bill. Like a lot of things, they stall in the Senate, or have this year. Another reason to change the makeup in the Senate. But in a broader sense, this whole issue of not just goes way beyond women's reproductive rights to broader health care rights that have been both by this administration changed in a way so that the issue of abortion, which will always be a morally difficult and issue that divides Americans, is getting down and infecting issues related strictly to family planning sorts of issues, and it's just it's contraceptive issues. It's just unbelievable what they've done. So there has to be a turn there. But more broadly, I would say this has not been an administration with an economic policy or a social policy that favors women or men or families. Largely because let's start with, let me run through some of these. And these are the major areas where I do disagree with Susan Collins. For example, start with the Bush economic policies. By Bush economic policies, I mean those tax cuts in 01 and 03 and 06, which favored the wealthiest people in this country and left the middle class behind. Now, you hear those words a lot. Let me give you an example. The 2001 tax cut contained some things for the middle class. It dropped the bottom rate from 15 to 10%, did some help increase the child tax credit, but that wasn't where the money went. The money didn't go to folks in the middle or folks who qualified for those provisions. The money went to the people who benefited from dropping the top rates, the very highest rate. The highest rate from 39.6% on income earned over about $350,000 to 35%, and the other rates were dropped as well. That's where the real money went. And in 2003, the drop in taxation on investment income for capital gains and dividend income. Let me give you an example of what that meant. For a person, a family right in the middle of the main economic spectrum, earning a little over $40,000 a year, those investment tax breaks meant on average, not for everyone, but on average, $22. For someone making around $1 million, the average of the upper 1% in Maine this coming year, that meant $16,400. So when I say weighted to the wealthy, that's what I mean, really weighted to the wealthy. So that most of the money, across the country in 2003, 70% of the benefits of those investment tax cuts, 70% went to the top 1% of the people in this country. I mean, it's just beyond belief. Susan voted for all of those. Olympia didn't. In 03 and 06, Olympia said, these are cynical, they're not proper, I'm not going to do it. John McCain, back when he was a maverick, voted against them as well. He said they offended his conscience. Now, as Barack Obama has said, McCain got over it, because now he advocates extending those tax breaks for the very wealthy. Now, what did that do? What it did is, it has meant less money for education, less money for health care, the Medicaid programs, less money for the maternal and child health block grant, for the child care development block grant, for Head Start. We have 100,000 fewer children in Head Start today than we did at the beginning of the Bush administration. Take early Head Start, which covers kids from 0 to 3 for poorer families. Today, 2.4% of all poor kids in that category are covered by early Head Start programs. 2.4%. And you're already on the verge, you're really in the workforce, and even if you're studying most of the time, you will be full-time before too long. Those young kids between 0 and 6 are the workforce of tomorrow, and we better get it right. If we're going to compete in a global economy with better educated boys and girls and men and women in China and all these developing countries, we'd better get our social policy right so we strengthen families and kids have the kind of start in life that they need to do well in school and then become productive adults. We need a very different set of policies than this administration has had, because they fundamentally believe that what the federal government does is, if not always bad, it is to be put down, diminished, and they believe more in the private sector than in government, and they think those two are in opposition to each other, when in fact they are reinforcing when you have the right theories. So that's one area where we need a big change. But we also need a huge change in healthcare. I don't know how many of you, I'd be interested, how many of you have health insurance? How many, keep your hands up. Do most of you have health insurance through the college, through the university? No.
So it gets taken away.
If
I left school last semester,
yeah.
My health insurance was taken away, even though I left for health reasons.
There are lots of people well, there's a story.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you leave for health reasons and lose your health insurance. I mean, that's part of the problem. And I know a lot of people, including my younger daughter and her husband, they now both have health insurance, but after they got out of college and were trying to get some further education and also work part-time, doing all of that, they often went for extended periods of time without health insurance, and they both obviously needed it at different times. The healthcare reform I've laid out in my on the website would provide everyone in the country with access to an affordable plan. Now, I'll try to explain this a lot more briefly than it's described on the website, which is tomallen.org. So go take a look at it. This plan is designed to, number one, provide access to an affordable plan for everyone. People can keep their health insurance, their private plan if they want, but if they don't, we're going to create a public plan like Medicare with a variety of different options and benefits, so that people can choose among those options and benefits, and they have choices comparable to the kinds that I have as a federal employee, as a member of Congress. Secondly, thirdly, we're going to drive down the cost of business, so that the businesses, particularly small businesses, can compete more effectively in this global economy and not be continually struggling to cover, ensure the owners and provide an affordable plan for the employees. Now, I think if we do this, this kind of reform can make a dramatic difference. Now, it costs a lot, and we'll get back to this in a moment, but everything that we're doing that's fairly bold and dramatic is going to cost some money, and we're going to have to make some significant changes there. Energy. People I talk to in Maine are continually worried by the cost of gasoline, the cost of heating oil. Even if those things are coming down, there's still the highest level of economic anxiety that I've seen in this state in the 12 years that I've been in the House. And all of these pressures have come together. I mean, we need a short-term policy which would help people get through the winter with a heating oil. I've got a $2,000 tax credit to do that. But in the long run, it's efficiency and conservation with everything that we have that uses energy. It's turning to wind and solar and biofuels to try to free us from the dependence either on coal for the generation of electricity or oil for the movement of our vehicles. And finally, to turn our vehicles into running as much on electricity as they do on gasoline. Plug-in hybrids from GM and Toyota are now just about 2 years away. And so there's a beginning there. These are some of the issues that, well, let me say this quickly. Susan Collins voted for all of the Bush economic policies, all of those tax breaks for the very wealthy. I voted against them. I supported all sorts of middle-class tax breaks. Susan voted for the Cheney energy bill in 2005, which moved billions of dollars to the oil and gas industry at a time when I didn't believe it was necessary. LCV, the League of Conservation Voters, called that bill the worst environmental piece of legislation that had ever passed the Congress. She supported the pharmaceutical, the Medicare Part D plan, which has been described as a financial bonanza for the pharmaceutical industry. I've worked in that area for a very long time, driving legislation that didn't make it through, but would have driven down the cost of pharmaceuticals for seniors and for taxpayers and put us in a much better place. Our differences on the war are very clear. I voted against the war. Susan voted for it. I'm for a deadline to bring our troops home. Susan is not. Susan chaired the Chief Oversight Committee and for 3.5 years prevented any hearings from being held on waste, fraud, and abuse by Halliburton, KBR, and other private contractors. And last year, finally, working with John Tierney earlier this year, we got through legislation in the House and actually passed the Senate finally, which would create an independent bipartisan commission to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse in Iraqi contracting. What we know is this: $23 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse gone. And I believe that a lot of that could have been prevented if the chair of the Chief Oversight Committee in the U.S. Senate had held those private contractors accountable. Now, I've covered sort of the waterfront here. And what I thought I'd do is stop, say one more thing and then stop. Coming back to why Diana and I made the decision to get into this race, it's all about the future. It's really all about your future. As I said, I just couldn't stand it anymore. I thought we were going down a path that would make this country weaker, that it would be much less a land of opportunity where, frankly, all Americans, I think this is in our genes, that what we expect is a reasonable chance to get ahead in life. That's really who we are. And as that opportunity was being stripped away by more and more people, it seemed to me we needed to do something dramatic. We have a grandson, our first grandchild, Charlie, who's named for my father, is now 7 months old. He's really cute. He's really cute. But if he lives to be 92, we will see the dawn of the 22nd century. Now, I can't imagine the 22nd century. I'm not going to see it, and I doubt that anyone in this room is going to see it. But Charlie may. My dad lived to be 90, so Charlie can make it to 92. The point of mentioning that is even when people talk about climate change, they talk about what this country and the planet will be like in 2050. 2050. That's, compared to 2100, 2050 is right around the corner. And a lot of you will see that. And so I believe that what we've been doing in Washington is way too short-term. It's thinking about the next election, not thinking about what's going to happen to our children and grandchildren. I cannot believe that we would have adopted the policies that this administration has adopted and that I've resisted if you had had a right-sized group thinking about the next generation. It just wouldn't have happened because it wasn't long-term thinking. It was all short-term, built on an ideology that the government is almost always bad and the private sector is almost always good. So what I want to happen in this election is I want us to build a team for change that is so big and so strong and so powerful that 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, people will look back at this moment and realize we did something remarkable in American history. The way we now look back on the progressive movement at the beginning of the 20th century, or look back at the New Deal, or even look back at 1965. After that big landslide election in 1965, here's what happened. The Congress of the United States passed Medicare and Medicaid and Head Start and federal support for elementary and secondary education and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Wilderness Act. That is an unimaginable agenda at any time in the decades since then. But I believe that if we get this election right, if we elect Barack Obama, if we have enough Democrats in the United States Senate, or at least enough people who are willing to get out in front and argue for the kind of change this country needs, if we have enough, then we can have one of those moments in American history, one of those progressive moments in American history that will turn this country in a better direction and for decades to come. And all I ask of you is, beyond using this as a study hall, is you take the next 26 or 27 days, if you can, and believe, and help as much as you can. Because this election, I believe, people will look back at years from now, if we get this right, and understand what a remarkable and exciting thing we did in a time of when so many people are actually discouraged and despairing and worried about where we go next. I think we can show them that we're going to a better place very fast, and we're going to do it by changing our politics and changing the lineup of people we have in Washington. So thank you very much for being here. Yes?
I do, Mr. Allen. We talk about the oversight of war profiteers, but what about the oversight of Fannie and Freddie Mac and a lot of these scandals that have been going on?
Yeah. What happened with Fannie and Freddie, well, let's broaden the topic a little bit. What happened over the last several years, you can go back to 1997 or 99 when Gramm-Leach-Bliley was passed, and it basically separated investment banks. It allowed the growth of investment banks without all the regulation that covers regular commercial banks. So there was a loosening of regulation then. And then what had happened in this decade is that lots of new financial instruments were developed. I mean, I can't really tell you what a credit default swap is, except that it's an insurance device or it's a way of insuring against losses in certain kinds of bonds, certain kinds of debt. And all of these new instruments developed without the kind of regulation and oversight that older instruments, regular mortgages, for example, would have had. And then people took packages of mortgages, all of which were secured by physical property somewhere, and they securitized them. They bundled them together and then sold them off in pieces, the way you would sell pieces of stock, parts of shares of stock in a company. And there wasn't the proper regulation there. And that comes to Fannie and Freddie. There should have been, I voted for, and the House passed in 2005, a bill that would have created a new regulator that would have overseen the work of, and regulated the work of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the 12 home loan banks, home loan bank boards.
But wasn't it the Democrats who held the ball on that?
No, not really. I mean, that's what the Republicans are saying now. The Republicans are saying, well, the Democrats did X or Y. The truth is, you can always find something along this path. You can see a quote from Barney Frank, where he basically is saying, that we want Fannie and Freddie to continue and expand the business that they were set up to do, which is to make mortgage loans available to people who want to buy their homes. You can always find something like that on either side. But the truth is that, by and large, deregulation of markets has been primarily a position of Republicans, and it's reached its peak during this Bush administration. Now, I'm not saying Democrats are blameless. I mean, I mean, there wasn't a lot of, nobody foresaw this kind of developing just this way, in exactly this form, though different people at different times were worried about it. But I think that in 2005, on the House side, we passed legislation that would have created this regulation. It didn't go anywhere in the Senate, and the Republican who passed it in 2005, the Republican chair of the House Financial Services Committee, has said that when he went to the White House asking for support from Republicans in the Senate and from the White House itself, he, in his words earlier in September this year, he said, "I got a one-finger salute." And that bill would have helped a good deal, but it didn't go through because of opposition from the White House. Somebody else, yes.
I have two questions. The first one is, do you consider yourself to be a feminist? One.
Do I consider myself to be a feminist?
Would you call yourself a feminist?
I hadn't thought of it quite that way, but I do. I mean, I think that I've been trained. For a while, the only other male in the house was our cat. And then we lost the cat, and now we have a female cat. But I have two daughters, and so I've learned a lot raising daughters, and I am still, I want you to know, a work in progress, according to my wife. I am still a work in progress. But no, I feel that I grew up, the time in which I grew up has made me what I am, a believer that everybody needs a chance to get ahead. And when I was growing up, it was women who were being held back. Diana didn't have the chances to play sports that our daughters had when they went through school. She didn't have the same expectations about what she could do or should do, either from her family or from the society, as is true for all of you. The things you now sort of take for granted, women can do anything, and often better for men. I will say, we know, those of us who run for office know this, because if you walk into our campaign offices, you'll see lots and lots of women, because you do get things done. But no, I do believe, and I have consistently pushed for legislation that will expand and improve opportunities for women and rights for women. That's why, one reason I got the Planned Parenthood endorsement. Let me, I'm not going to tell you I can fix all of this. I can tell you that we did the largest increase, in this last Congress, we did the largest increase in student aid that has been done, I think, since the GI Bill. And we reduced interest rates on the Stafford loans, and we have increased the Pell Grants, and we need to sort of keep on doing that. But there are so many people today who go through higher education and come out with, really backbreaking level of debt that I don't think we've figured this all out yet. I do think there's going to be need, particularly in the number of different areas where we don't have enough people, try to figure out how to help people get through these higher education institutions so that we have enough, for example, medical personnel or people in other areas. But the broader issue, I think, is very serious. I mean, watching my younger daughter and her husband go through school these last few years, you can see, I hear the stories about people who come to this institution or other institution and can't afford to buy the books for the courses that they're taking. And that kind of economic pressure makes what you're doing very, very difficult. And some of you, I'm sure, are working part-time, and this is not easy. I get the problem. The amount of money, the scale we have to deal with this is a real challenge. But I do understand the problem and would do everything I could to help out.